here we have a living room that's all themed FIFA, and here we got a backyard that's all themed FIFA for that. And what I'm doing is protecting their inventory and having a conversation with them and saying, if you want the prize, play the part. Same thing, I'm here today with the jersey. We're talking about World Cup. So what we're looking for magnets. What attracts people?
They are showing up in certain stadiums where we clearly see a spike and a dip between the finals and the quarterfinals and the group stages, but not in every stadium. For example, MetLife clearly has a very high spike for the finals, but the rest of the matches are probably still getting priced similarly right now.
We don't want to put a very high restriction in terms of length of stay because we know it will be very concentrated for a couple of days in most of the cases. But we do apply also a weekly discount. So if somebody wants to book for a week long, welcome, please. That's great because you are actually filling in those gap nights.
So I actually did end up getting booked in Philadelphia for some of that round of 32. Not quite all of the games. And, we still have the quarterfinals available and everything. But I was surprised at how quickly it booked, even with those restrictions. So there's a lot of tolerance for high ADRs out there, and I would encourage everybody to be aggressive when you're doing your initial rate setting.
Welcome to RevLabs by PriceLabs.
Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm super, super excited about this. I'm a data geek. I'm a sports nerd. I'm all of this stuff. And I get to just kind of be a moderator for this amazing panel that we've got. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm your host, Kyle. I'm a senior solutions consultant with PriceLabs. And the FIFA World Cup of 2026, it's not just going to be about the high demand that we're going to end up seeing. It's about uneven demand. It's about volatile supply. And it's about making pricing decisions that can either amplify or limit your total revenue this year. So it's not linear, and your pricing shouldn't be either. So if you're listening, you're probably aware of what PriceLabs is, but this is going to be my little bit of a sales pitch here for you. PriceLabs is the #1 pricing provider in the short-term rental space. We've also got pricing available for midterm rentals, service departments, anything that is an accommodation you're going to be able to use PriceLabs for. We're the proud winner of the Battleground Judges winner at the DARM Award, or I'm sorry, at DARM last year. We won the Battleground Judges Choice Award. And we also won Best Supplier and nominated again this year for Best Supplier at the Strive Awards. So really looking forward to this. Let me kill this off real quick. As I said, I'm your host. If you've ever listened to the RevLabs, you've probably heard me. I'm Kyle, Senior Solutions Consultant here. Absolutely love being a part of this, so thank you all for joining us. I'm joined today by my teammate on Q&A, Rafal. You've had him a couple of times if you've participated in this. Rafal is one of our best product specialists, so when you reach out to our support team, he's one of those people that you may talk to. Thank you for being here for us, Rafal. But again, if you have questions, throw those in the Q&A. If you have something you just want to kind of chat about, use that chat functionality. But I'm just the host, and Rafal's just Q&A. This is what we're here for, right? So these are our speakers today. I'm super excited to be joined by Adrienn with Angel Host, with Jason from Marketix, Tim Speicher, who is one of the premier revenue managers in this space as well. And then my wonderful teammate, I am so excited to introduce him to you all. His name's Soumyadeep Paul. He's our manager of our revenue management teams, our data analysis teams. He pays so much attention to the events. So when you see new events pop up in your listing, Soumyadeep's the guy that's in there. His team's helping take care of that for you, helping make sure that that demand factor is really taken care of. So I've done a brief introduction, but I want to let them run through and talk about themselves a little bit. So Miss Adrienn, do you care to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kyle. It's a pleasure to be here. And hi, everyone. I'm Adrienn, the Director of Revenue Management at Angel Host, a Canadian-based company. I've been with the team over 7 years and been in revenue management over a decade. And at Angel Host, we help property managers and owners worldwide to take over their pricing strategies and listing optimization. And as of today, we have over 1,500 listings.
It's amazing. Thank you for being here, Adrienn. Really looking forward to this. Now we've got Jason with Marketix as well. Jason, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and if you want to, mention a little something special you might have for the audience as well.
This sounds good. Well, thank you for having me on. I'm really grateful to be amongst this group of panelists that I look at their technical expertise and I'm impressed by. CEO and founder of Marketics, a business that I started about 10 years ago, or it pivoted multiple times. I've been in the trenches, started off as an Airbnb host, and now I've optimized over 1,000 listings out there. And what we do is we're a performance-based optimization service for Airbnb hosts, hoteliers, and property managers. So just talking about what I have for everybody at the end, I'll share a link after. I have a guide for everybody if you want to sign up to it. And it's 12 pages of really condensed information of how to and very practical stuff. So if everybody's listening and wants to get a head start on this opportunity and want some guidance by themselves, well, I'm there to offer it, or the guide is.
That's awesome, Jason. Now, this podcast is visible on YouTube, but you've also got it on Spotify where people can't really see the video and all that. So you're in the full World Cup mode right now. Whose jersey are you rocking right now?
I'm wearing Spain.
Spain, España. Very nice. Who's the name on the back? We got
There-
Raul.
there- there's no name on the back. It'd be my kid's name, if anything.
Hey, that's amazing. Fantastic to have you, Jason. Really looking forward to this conversation. And now let's get to Mr. Tim. Tim, care to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure. I am Tim Speicher. I'm a independent revenue manager, so I work more or less as a fractional director of revenue for a number of different companies. They're in Iceland, Sweden, South Africa, Canada, and the US. And when it comes to World Cup properties, I've got some properties in Atlanta, Philadelphia, and just outside of Houston. So, yeah, I'm really excited about this opportunity. Mostly I manage like big portfolios, but I do have a couple of individual listings I'm tracking for this. So really excited to share what we've learned so far.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. And then let's put a bow on it with Soumyadeep. Introduce yourself to the audience, please, sir.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me on the call. I'm Soumyadeep. I currently head our events team. We look at events across the globe, all the major ones, repeating concerts, every kind of events that are impactful for our users, for pricing, for occupancy, and we make sure that those are priced appropriately. I also look after some of the data analysis that our company does for identify different trends, different opportunities for growth and stuff like that. And we also help some of the large users with some of their guiding them on how to improve their performance. I've been with PriceLabs for almost 3 years now, and prior to that, I was with a company called Oyo Rooms, where I was also a revenue manager, looking after the Southeast Asian Middle East business. And right now, looking after all the events for PriceLabs. Yeah, I think that's about me. Thank you so much for having me on the call.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to have you. And for everybody, I got to geek out a little bit. Soumyadeep and I have been with the team for basically the exact same time. We came in the same onboarding class. We're basically connected at the hip. I know what he brings to our team, and I'm really excited to have him join us here in this conversation as well. So let's get started. We spent a little bit of time introducing everybody, but I want you to know the group that we've brought here for you today. They know their stuff. We've got pretty much everywhere that what the World Cup is going to be covered. We've got Canada covered. We've got Mexico City. We've got Miami. We've got all those US locations covered here for you. So the first thing that we're going to start talking about, we're going to talk about supply growth and the revenue quality that we're currently seeing. We'll have a couple of questions in there. We'll get our perspective from our guests, and then we'll kind of slide into some other details. We're going to talk about venues and the teams and how those are affecting what you're going to be able to achieve with your revenue. We're also going to slide into some conversation about restrictions and how to capture revenue. How should you strategize for that? And then finally, we're going to get into how do you manage the volatility? How do you prepare for those next stages? How do you prepare for the round of 32, the quarterfinals, the semifinals, where we don't even know who's going to be there yet? So we're going to start off talking about supply growth and revenue quality. And real quick, if you're able to see the video, I've got a chart up here for us now that shows what's happening currently with supply growth. And on this one, if you don't mind, Soumyadeep, I'm going to have you hop in and kind of talk about this a little bit and what you're seeing from the PriceLabs side of things.
This is such a common but also very interesting chart. Like every time we have a very large event over a sustained period of time, we almost always see a significant increase in supply. For example, in Olympics 2024, we almost saw 100% growth in supply because people expect to see that higher demand over a very sustained long period. The same thing with Winter Olympics, for example, in Cortina, Italy, we saw almost a 50% growth in supply. And here again, we almost are seeing something similar. But whether a city is able to increase the supply depends upon whether the city is prepared to do that. Over the last couple of years, we have seen certain city introduce restrictions, regulations that limit how much a city can increase its supply when the demand grows suddenly, right? So for example, if you look at a city like BC Place, British Columbia, over the last couple of years, British Columbia have introduced a certain number of restrictions that include registrations, certain fees, that don't allow the supply to grow. So over a period of time, the supply has gone down. So this 14 or 15% decline that we're seeing is not so much related to FIFA, but the fact that they have been coming down slowly as the regulations got implemented. However, different cities are treating this new challenge differently. With FIFA coming in, most of the cities are anticipating a significant increase in demand. And certain cities and municipalities within British Columbia are introducing steps to make the restrictions a little less onerous on the users so that they can open up the supply. But certain cities, like in the neighborhood of Sophie Stadium, which again has restrictions, the supply has not gone up. Again, like you're familiar with Kansas City, where they have introduced an option to reduce the amount of fees required for opening up supply so that their supply has grown compared to the others, right? So while this is a very familiar thing that we see across every time a large event over a long period of time happens, whether this actually results in higher supply or not depends upon how the city is set up in terms of restrictions and regulations.
Okay. And when we move over to this next one as well, if I can get over there, well, possibly. There we go. All right. So now we've got one up here that says, is the supply expanding faster than demand in some markets? And from the looks of this, it looks like Atlanta may be leading the pack on that. So do you care to talk a little bit about that, Soumyadeep? And then I'm going to bring the rest of our group in to kind of talk about what they're seeing in some of these markets as well.
So on the amount of demand that we see, apart from the pricing, there are multiple factors that will drive your demand, such as the quality of matches, the types of teams that are playing, the pricing that you have set up, whether the timeline fits how you're placed with respect to when the ticket sales started, whether the tickets have actually gone out. But one thing that is very interesting is a very large impact played by the type of matches and the teams that are playing. Take, for example, Levi Stadium, which currently has the lowest occupancy. Unfortunately, Levi Stadium does not have any of the premium matches. It mostly does not have any of the top teams. It does have a semi-final or a quarterfinal match, but the other matches are not that great. So Levi Stadium is almost at the bottom in terms of occupancy. Similarly, with BMO Field, there's one match from Germany, one from Canada, which is the home team, but the rest of the matches are not that great. So as a result, it's not up there. But when you look at Gillette Stadium, it has a couple of very interesting matches from some of the top teams. Mercedes-Benz has a couple of matches from some of the very top teams, and MetLife, of course, has the finals. So those are the matches or the stadiums that are pacing ahead of the others, driven by the quality of teams they're playing, the kind of matches they have, and all of those factors which are playing a pretty big role in how the occupancy shapes up.
Now I want to kind of pivot a little bit, and I want to go to Miss Adrienn, if you don't mind. And in conversations you're having with any of your homeowners that are in these areas, what do you think we're kind of seeing when it comes to optimism with ADR? Are they really expecting things that are realistic? Are they expecting rates that are unrealistic? Kind of what's your experience right now, Adrienn?
So I would say it's a little bit mixed, depends on the owners, of course. We have owners who are more data-driven, let's say, and also showing the what is happening. As going back to Soumyadeep comment, indeed, there will be a very big difference in demand based on which countries are playing. So we cannot really put a flat pricing or use a flat price or protect rates at a flat minimum rate for the whole FIFA season, right? Because at the end, depends who will play, which country has a very strong fan demand as well, which are willing to travel across, the continent as well. We know that it will be a very international event, a lot of Europeans as well. And I can already see, for example, in Miami market specifically, there is the first game, there is not really much demand. Occupancy rate is pretty low, but if I look at 24th of June, where Brazil and Scotland is playing, market occupancy rate is picking up. So we can definitely see those kind of difference between the matches. So I would really recommend to everybody, and also to the owners or revenue manager who has to communicate strategies with the owners, to really review how the market is pacing based on the different matches, and to adjust the pricing strategy, which countries or which games will bring higher demand, and which are those games which, yes, there will be demand, definitely, but not as strong compared to other games which have a very strong fan demand.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tim, I wanna switch over to you real quick. You're our Atlanta guy, so to speak, and we do see Mercedes-Benz is moving really, really well. So for your Atlanta properties that you're working with, what are you kind of focusing in on when it comes to that rate expectation? You know, how optimistic are you and your homeowners for what you're going to be able to achieve during this World Cup matchup?
Yeah, so for the Atlanta property that I'm watching, it's two 5-bed properties there. And the owner decided to go maximum maximum aggression. She was like, I'm gonna get the absolute highest ADR that I can get on every night. And I was like, okay, well, if we're gonna do that, especially at a 5-bed home, then we're gonna have to take the length of stay all the way down to a 1 night minimum. And then we're going to try to attract longer stays using promotions. So I've got a 1 night minimum, but then I have discounts for a 2 night stay, 3 night stay, 4 night stay, and 5 night stay. And my 5 night stay is a little bit bigger than my week-long discount that I normally have on the books. And she's prepared, like if she needs to, she's prepared to get in there with her cleaning team, like her personally and her cleaners, to do like a same day turn every single day if she needs to. So we initially have rates very high. We're like right around the 90th percentile. I think that we did something like a 20% inflation on what PriceLabs initially published, and now we're waiting. So we've not gotten booked yet. Market occupancy is still sitting down at like 3%. So the demand profile for these larger homes in this area has not really taken shape. So I'm waiting and watching and seeing what happens, and then we're gonna make some adjustments as the market evolves.
Love it. So that's a unique approach. We're going high, high, high rate. We're going short minimum stay. Now, Jason, from your side of things, how are you helping people achieve that ADR? Like, if we're really optimistic about ADR, what are some things that you're doing with your customers, or what advice would you give to the audience to how they can improve listings and really strive to get that top ADR? What advice would you give to the audience?
Okay, so the same advice I give to each one of my clients. Price is one part of it. The availability is another. Right now, we're protecting that inventory. We're looking at what's happening, what happened in the past in the Middle East, and a lot of it was towards the end. So where I'm prepping everybody at the end of the day is to look at the product that you're offering out there. And I'll give you a quick example here. I printed it up, but it's like, can you see that properly?
We can, yep. Just killed the
Okay.
screen share so we can see it. Perfect.
Okay, I don't, there you go. So here we have a living room that's all themed FIFA, and here we got a backyard that's all themed FIFA for that. And what I'm doing is protecting their inventory and having a conversation with them and saying, if you want the prize, play the part. Same thing, I'm here today with the jersey, we're talking about World Cup. So what we're looking for magnets, what attracts people, they're there. And what we've done is segmented our bookings into like four fan profiles. So you got the mission fan, he books out about 90 days in advance and then pays about 3 times as normal. So this is just data I've looked at in the past. You got your speculator, great last minute bookings, but he also creates chaos. So they're booking in advance, they're looking for places that are, that don't have a firm cancellation policy. Same time, the next one is atmosphere seeker. So what they look at is they don't have a ticket, but yet their length of stay goes up. They go about 5 nights of staying time, and then you also have the family planner. So just talk to multiple bedrooms, these profiles. So it's not always what's the ADR and the occupancy. It's who's booking, and how are you going to create that attraction. So when I look at data pans that no one really tracks, is that the mission fan shows up 94% of the time and tips more. So if anybody's in the hotelier business or your cleaners, they'll get more tip from there. They're very enthusiastic towards the whole experience. Your atmosphere seekers generate highest LTV because they also come back. They just look for that vibe, to participate in it, but they also come back because they tend to be also closer to the area. So the other one is if your ADR is up and you're attracting speculators, your review scores will tank and you'll lose the ripple effect from this whole experience. And I'm going to talk very briefly to ripple effect, and I'll talk to it after, is your city just became on the world scene from everybody. They're watching the games, people are watching the games from home. So when people are looking to travel afterwards, it's whatever's top of mind that's going to come up. And I'm based out of Montreal. We have F1, and there's such an experience afterwards that happens. So if you get this right, you're really going to be successful throughout the whole summer.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I'm gonna share my screen again for anybody that's viewing this right now. And what we've got here is current pricing at Kansas City, Missouri. So right outside of Arrowhead Stadium. And what we can see, I'm hoping that you all can see where I'm hovering as well. This is where World Cup's at. And there's a lot of pricing that is kind of just high, so to speak. We've got very, very high rates in the market. We can see for the quarterfinal, we've got rates that are pushing up into the thousands per night. The current booked prices are coming in around $200 to $300. So essentially what's happened is the low-hanging fruit's been picked off, and everybody's starting to react now. But we don't see a ton of movement in here based on those matches. And this is where we're going for the next one, is the importance of the venues, the teams, who's going in there. So Soumyadeep, I want to bring you in on this one if you don't mind. And I want us to talk a little bit about this. Now I'm gonna mention the matches in here, but the first one is Argentina defending their World Cup crown. Huge rate power, occupancy should be through the roof by the time we get there. Then the next matchup is Ecuador, which is one of the smallest nations that's coming into the United States. They're not going to have a ton of fans in here, but just from this view of the market, a lot of the market is pricing that second match that has Ecuador the exact same as the first match that has Argentina versus the third match that has the Netherlands. Two teams that are going to bring a lot of demand versus one that's not, but a lot of people in the market are pricing the exact same across the board. So Soumyadeep, what is something that you're seeing, not necessarily just with Kansas City, but in terms of overall pricing? What do you think? Are people just being too optimistic with how high they're going for these rates? Now, we know certain people, the upper echelons are going to get those big numbers, but do you think just overall across the board, maybe we're striving to get a little too high with our rates?
I think to understand where we are right now, we kind of look at the timeline over which the Olympics has been playing out. So there are a couple of key points in the entire timeline of the journey. So the matches schedule being declared around, the locations declared around 2.5 years back, 2.5 years back. The actual schedule being declared somewhere around December 15th. And then we have the ticket sales going through, and only recently we had the finalization of tickets. We're still going through a phase where there's a resale. There's going to be other ways in which, the tickets are going to change hands. Right? And one of the things that we observed moving into the schedule declaration was that the occupancy had started picking up, but quite a bit, but only on the very low priced bookings. So it's probably just customers who are looking to get the low hanging fruits, like you mentioned, get some bookings that they can get going. And after that, once the schedule got declared, the prices really went up. Right? They were already a bit higher prior to this, and then it kept going up and up because it's probably just building on customers' expectations that if others are increasing price, they should get a higher price. And eventually, we right now see a kind of stabilization in customer expectations, and we are starting to see a growth in ADR. So the low price supply is probably now exhausted, and the ADR curve is now starting to point upwards, meaning that people are now exploring those higher price listings and the higher price properties. But in general, in terms of pricing that we're seeing across days, it could be an effect of minimum stay restrictions. If they have a LOS kind of pricing, right? 7-day LOS pricing, then your pricing over a period of time might look constant, right? So even though the LOS is on Argentina game, if they have a LOS of 5 days or 7 days, that might spread out over multiple days. So, and in terms of matches, the customers, I think a lot of them are still on a wait and watch mode, like we discussed, right? So they're still trying to figure out what everybody else is doing, right? So nobody is willing to be the first one to, I'll drop my price, get my booking, because everybody's like, okay, there's plenty of demand, we'll get there, right? And maybe they're waiting for some more maturity in signals, some more pickup before they finally start taking decisions on distinguishing between different matches, different times of the matches, the different quality of matches, which will eventually start showing up. They are showing up in certain stadiums where we clearly see a spike and a dip between the finals and the quarterfinals and the group stages, but not in every stadium. For example, MetLife clearly has a very high spike for the finals, but the rest of the matches are probably still getting priced similarly right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Soumyadeep, you mentioned something that's really, really important, and that's these dates that are coming up that are going to be very influential. We've already hit a couple of those. When we talked earlier this week, Jason, you had mentioned a couple of dates that are really important to you going forward. Obviously, they're going to be important to everybody, but I want you to be able to talk on those as well. So what are some of the dates that you're looking forward to for when you need to start making some type of a pivot or start looking deeper into the data? What are some of those dates from your side?
Well, the important is understand how FIFA works. They sell it in groups of tickets, and they also create packages. So, a certain ticket is also going to go with a certain five-star hotel. So that gets sold together. So, for the average person using this product, they're not going to see that demand spike right away. The demand comes with the pilgrimage, the people that come towards this. And there's different gates where you can resell your ticket, and just I'm sharing for anybody to better understand it, is that FIFA takes a percentage. Like they're the sole transaction platform where you can either buy tickets or sell tickets and resell tickets. So what happens from there is they take 15%. So they're tracking everything that's going on. And if you follow what they're doing, they're going to give you the gold nuggets at the same time. And right now up to, there's a gate closing on February 22nd. And then it reopens on April 2nd. And this is where the general admission tickets or lottery that comes into place. And this is where they're going to fill up the rest of the stadium, and they don't have certain hotels booked. So this is where you're going to see whether it be Airbnb or the boutique hotels really start to take shape from here on in, and the excitement. So you're going to have two things. You're going to have restricted demand because everything closes during that period. So there's a demand hype that's going to go up between that time. My suggestion to all the hosts out there, whether you own a boutique hotel or an Airbnb and you're in these areas, is to really pair, you want the highest ADR out of this experience, dress up your properties, make that magnet happen. Because that's really I'll give you an example. The Airbnb algorithm has already been primed to look for these type of images. So it's going to have an up boost. So the more that you show up first and someone's really into this, they're going to be opting towards the experience. So that's what I'm saying. And then the second, like the double upswing is just that there's the release of the Mass General tickets from here on in. So I really think that, we're having a good conversation. It's giving people time to reflect. And then from there, it's from here to April 2nd to really zone into the little details that you want to do into your property that's going to attract the right type of guest into your property and pay the full price for the experience. And there's a good fair exchange. You feel good with, the revenue you're taking in.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm going to share my screen back up real quick again. And now we're going to start talking about those host cities. And as we've kind of hinted at a few times now, the one that's working the best right now when it comes to occupancy is Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. It's got a lot of occupancy right now. The ADR growth that we do see in here looks pretty good. Now, this is for the group stages. This is not for the quarterfinals. And my apologies, I don't remember if Mercedes-Benz has the quarterfinals or semifinals. But what we're seeing is right now, Mercedes-Benz has the highest occupancy. Tim, being our guy in Atlanta that's got the properties there, how are you navigating this right now? Like as you see this, as occupancy numbers start to grow, what are you kind of looking for as signals of when you need to look and pivot, where you might want to go in and start tweaking a little bit?
Yeah, one of the most important metrics I watch just in general is I look at current market occupancy in my comp set versus last year's final market occupancy for that same night. So if the occupancy got up to 80% last year, then I'm like tracking versus last year's 80%. And typically I'm aggressive on ADR until it reaches 50% of last year's final. And then I start dropping the rate and getting, looking a little more for occupancy. Because this demand is it's not in the historicals, but we have a forecast of like 100% occupancy. We expect demand to be historical, even if it's not in the historicals. I'm going a little bit later on that ADR strategy, so I'm probably going to wait until the market gets up to like 60%, 65% booked or so, and then I'm going to start bringing rates down and seeing what happens. At that point, I'll have a much better sample size for what people are willing to pay in the area. And also, I'll have everybody else will have adjusted their rates, so I'll be able to benchmark my rates against everybody else a little bit better. Um, Also, the owner is working on corporate partnerships over this time. She's trying to sell out the property to a company that wants to, host some event. They need to house the people for the staff for the event. They're doing some sort of corporate something going on. So keeping the rates high keeps the calendar clear for her negotiations. And so once she exhausts that and knows, okay, either yes, we did get a couple of bookings or no, we didn't, at that point, I'll start really optimizing and just trying to get heads and beds. They'll still be at good ADRs, but right now I'm going for like all-time record ADRs.
That's awesome to hear. How about you, Adrienne? What are you kind of approaching the Mexico City, the Miami markets? How are you approaching that, and what are some signals that you're kind of looking for adjusting your strategy?
So circling back also to team, it's a similar strategy, definitely. I mean, right now we are protecting rates for all the destination. We are more close to the 19th percentile based on also the games, what we have. So I already see that some of the games, they won't have that much demand as others. And I think, Kyle, you had it exactly. That's the slide. So we can clearly see like Spain, Brazil, for example, in Miami. And let's talk about also kind of those gap nights. So we know that most of the people who are coming to watch the World Cup, they will come, first of all, for their countries to be there and support them. So they will come for one game or multiple games, but multiple destinations. So it's not that somebody's coming to Miami and then they will still stay for 2 weeks looking at different games. However, if you have, let's say on Wednesday, and that's an example for Miami, we have Brazil and Scotland, and on Saturday, Portugal and Colombia, we can see that those games actually, they already have peaks, and there is a really high chance that you get a 4-night or 5-night stay. But there are some games which have a really big gap, even a 5-night. I wouldn't really protect those with a length of stay restriction, because we could actually miss out of those high ADR paying guests who are coming just for 3 nights or 2 nights and not for a full week, right?
Absolutely. And it's really interesting when I was in Kansas City talking about the World Cup a couple of weeks ago, Key Data presented some facts as well, and they mentioned that Scotland is one of these nations that, regardless of where they're at, their occupancy is really, really booming. Scotland relates back to this Brazil thing. One other thing that I think is really important for the audience to understand is not every team's been decided. There are still potential heavy hitters like Italy. Italy's not necessarily in the World Cup yet. We would assume that they're probably going to make it. Turkey's another one of those teams that could end up bringing a lot of demand with them as well. Those teams are yet to be decided. When on the previous slide that we looked at here, when we look at the lowest occupancy stadiums, I think it's important to understand a little bit of context. Unfortunately, I can't speak to the Toronto one. If anybody can speak to Toronto and what the matches are there, feel free to chime in. But for SoFi Stadium, they have more of the U.S. matches. They also have the U.S. versus Iran as a match. LA has a big Iran contingency. So my thinking is for SoFi Stadium, you're going to have a lot more domestic travelers in that one. And those bookings are probably going to come a little bit later. or Toronto, not 100% sure. Jason, Adrian, I don't know if you have any input on Toronto or the matchups there or not, but
Actually, the first week of Toronto, the first match will be a Canadians who will play. So there is already a little spike, a little one, still kind of shy. But I think also a lot of Canadians will book more in last minute, more between the 60 to 30 booking windows. So right now we're still a little bit early, as you also kind of mentioned, and some of you before, there are still some stages where tickets will be actually sold. So not all the tickets have been sold. I think it's around 2 million out of 7 million tickets. So there are still a lot of tickets to be sold. And as you mentioned, Kyle, there are still some playoffs, which will be played. I think it will be at the end of March. So that will also shake a little bit the demand and also the occupancy rate for some of the destination.
yeah, and I think adding on to that, that goes to kind of what Jason was talking about with those different customer segments and who you're going after. It really is kind of market dependent. You know, if going back to Kansas City, if you're going to get a lot of international travelers coming in. SoFi Stadium, Toronto, you're going to end up with a lot of domestic travelers coming in. So positioning and understanding when those people are going to book is going to be very, very important. So I want to throw just kind of a scenario out there for you. And Adrian, let's say you have somebody right now that's wanting to come into Miami. They're wanting to follow Brazil. How are you trying to potentially extend your length of stay? What would be something that you might suggest to the audience to help them extend that length of stay out a little bit?
So as of today, for the Miami properties, even if our kind of most our segment is 1 to 2 bedroom properties, we are still kind of protect with a 3-night minimum stay, not going crazy. So as we mentioned, we don't want to put a very high restriction in terms of length of stay because we know it will be very concentrated for a couple of days in most of the cases. But we do apply also a weekly discount. So if somebody wants to book for a week long, I mean, welcome, please. That's great because you are actually filling in those gap nights. What also Tim was mentioning about his strategy to be very aggressive on the short stay, but trying to get those longer stays with some discounts. So as of today, we do apply a weekly discount. So definitely, let's see how it will work out. And as we get closer and see also the pacing and mainly the compression of the market, right? Because right now we cannot really talk about compression. There are still so many properties available in the market. So I agree with Tim. We will see more around the 50% when the market, half of them, it gets booked. What should be your area? Should you actually review it? And I would even recommend to everybody here who is listening in to first adjust your length of stay before you adjust your rates.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And kind of the same question for you, Tim. Let's say you're in that strategy that you were talking about, high rates, super short length of stay. You've got weekly and monthly discounts in there. Let's say the weekly, monthly discounts aren't hitting. When are you kind of looking at positioning yourself and switching that length of stay?
Well, I will keep the length of stay minimum at 1 and just manage the length of stays through the promotions. So, you know, the 1 night stay will never be discounted. Actually, that's not true. I have a blanket 10% discount far out and 10% last minute discount and also a channel inflation of 10%. So anytime somebody looks at the price, it'll always look like there's a 10% discount, even though it matches what's coming out of PriceLabs. So other than that discount, you'll only get discounts through longer stay lengths. It's just those I would never run a discount for a 2, 3, 4, or 5 night stay. Maybe a 5, but 2, 3, or 4, definitely not throughout most of the year. But because I'm so high, and I know that almost everybody is only going to have like price tolerance for that ADR if they're booking only 1 night. It's like, well, that allows me to access a couple of different levels of demand without having to adjust my rate at all. So I probably won't change the length of stay minimums because I don't want to restrict any demand whatsoever. So I will probably just end up playing with my ADR a little bit. You know, it's funny. you've been talking about Atlanta, but I have a property in Philadelphia as well, where I was less aggressive on the ADR, and I did implement longer minimum stays because the owner wasn't going to be able to have like a same day turn, like if that happened. And I didn't protect my ADR enough. So I actually did end up getting booked in Philadelphia for some of that round of 32. Not quite all of the games, and we still have the quarterfinals available and everything. But I was surprised at how quickly it booked, even with those restrictions. So there's a lot of tolerance for high ADRs out there, and I would encourage everybody to be aggressive when you're doing your initial rate setting.
Yeah, love that. Love that advice. Jason, kind of going over to you. Are you concerned at all that some customer, or I shouldn't say customers, people in the market might be hurting themselves by being too restrictive with minimum stays? Or do you kind of see it as it's necessary right now until everything starts kind of working out? How do you feel about what customers and what people should be doing with their minimum length of stay?
Okay, it depends on each property owner, operator from there, if they have the ability to turn around, or like Tim gave an example, someone, didn't have that too much time to turn over guests. So you got to take that into consideration. Just looking from past events and what the event is, I would really stick to, let's say, a 3 night minimum for now, nothing above that. I find that if you go anything above that, you're putting a wall up, and you don't want to create walls within your business. It's everybody's playing a game of Tetris to try to figure out what's the perfect drop. But at the same time, you want to make sure that let's say you get a 3 night booking at $900 a night, that's $2,700. Well, that beats a calendar that a 5 night that might never come. And then you're scrambling towards the end to be able to get it. So, the tactical move is set the length of stay on window velocity, not necessarily event importance, and then have your strategy in advance before you get to it. It's the emotional scramble that messes up everything. So if you have certain parameters set for yourself, you draft it out in advance and you say, okay, within 60 days, within 30 days, within 15 days, and see how it falls. And then from there, you're going to have your orphan dates. A lot of people discount the orphan dates in between. And I'm like, nope, I would double those. So if there's becoming, that you have a 3 night and a 3 night, and you have an orphan date right in the middle, well, I'm going to boost that one up. I'll double its rate, because I know at some point someone, I'm playing probability in this game. So that would be my best strategy for anybody doing it on themselves, is lower your minimum night stay, see what comes in, and if you have orphan, then gamble with the orphan date and increase your ADR.
I love that. Now, if you're talking to a large property manager, whether it's in Canada or US or down in Mexico, what would be something that you might think would be a common mistake that these large property managers that are, they're dealing with 15, 20, 50 units at a time. What would you see as a potential mistake that they might be making right now, Jason?
Great question. I think that what people overlook if they have a larger portfolio is how each one of those properties rank on the booking algorithms.
Very individual. Yeah.
It's very individual, and it's learning to know how you rank. Because if you're at the top of the ranking, guess what? Someone who has money doesn't want to go to page 10 to look for a deal, you're there.
Yep.
Whereas some other properties, well, now's the time to make it work. Drop your rates and not make your business around World Cup. I would not recommend that either. But get your place filled up as often as you can, build up your stars, and we all know that the stars equal a higher, ranking on the booking channels. And then from there, reprice closer to the events.
Yeah. I like that. Now, I'm gonna give that same question to you, Tim. If you're talking to I'm gonna get away from Atlanta and Philly. Let's put you out in Santa Clara. What
Right.
kind of conversations are you having with people? What kind of mistakes do you think large property managers that are working on scale might come across when building out for something that's a super event like this?
Yeah, so I saw something like this a few years ago. I was on a revenue management team, at one of the largest companies in the industry. And I had a revenue manager on my team. She was actually the most experienced revenue manager at that company. And there were a bunch of us. And she just, she was managing some properties in Phoenix when it had the Super Bowl, and she just got too greedy. I think that she was like thinking about, okay, I've got all of these other cities I'm managing. Those cities are struggling. I'm trying, focused, trying to get those buildings to improve. And she just set the rates crazy high and also set a huge length of stay minimum, like 5 nights or something like that for the Super Bowl. And it's like, okay, I understand the demand is really high, but it's not infinite. And if you think about it as like, oh, I could get whatever I want, well, then you might end up with nothing. So she kept the rates super, super high, kept the minimum stay super high, was focused on other stuff. We called it out for weeks, like, hey, is this still the way you want to approach it? And she's like, yes, people are going to book at the last minute once they know who's in the Super Bowl and all of this stuff. And she waited too long, eventually dropped the minimum stay, eventually had to drop the ADR and had negative year over year RevPAR for those nights, even though she had the Super Bowl in one year and not the previous year. So I also telling that story, I have to say I did something similar with South by Southwest, like way back in like 2017. So, we're not immune to it. Speaking from experience, don't get too greedy. Let the guests be the emotional ones, spending more money than they've ever spent on one night to see, for a once in a lifetime opportunity. Let them be emotional, but you like be rational.
I love that. Love that advice. So, going to give the same question to you, Adrian. What is a common mistake you may see, and then how are you approaching those conversations with homeowners to make sure that they are letting the experts be the experts and not trying to put too much on top of you, so to
No,
speak?
totally agree with Jason and Tim. I think that's definitely one of the biggest mistake when people are trying to overshoot the prices, and then at the end you just remain or without any booking, or you have to really deeply discount because there is no compression. I mean, the compression is already at the maximum. You won't get any booking at the very last minute at a super premium ADR. So I think, indeed, look at the market prices, look at your comp set where they are also positioned. And especially for properties which are studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, you are not just competing with STR, you are competing with the hotel inventory too. So especially in PriceLabs, you have also the hotel data. I would really encourage everybody to set up your comp set for the hotel data where you are located, and track also the data, how the hotels are actually priced, so that you are not overpriced compared to Ritz-Carlton, for example.
I love it. And real quick, before we get into the Q&A, I'm going to share my screen up again, and I want to pull up some data from the last World Cup when it was in Qatar. And for folks that aren't fully aware of that market, Qatar is a very last minute market just in general. Like their booking window is 1 to 10 days maximum, so to speak. So bookings were already kind of expected to be more last minute. But Soumyadeep, I want to bring you in on this and just talk about what we can kind of expect, and when do you think like we're going to see those massive surges? And again, it's all dependent on the matches. It's dependent on the location as well. But if you were just kind of talking blanket wise, Soumyadeep, when do you think we're going to start seeing some real growth? And do you think it's going to reflect Doha like what we're seeing right here?
So, in order to understand where we are, maybe it's a good idea to look at who are currently booking, right? So there could be domestic customers who are going to make the bookings eventually, and there would be international customers who, for the visa requirements or whatever, for the flight tickets, need to get their bookings done right away so that they can get into the process, right? So some of the current demand factor might likely be driven by the people who have just got the tickets, are getting into the process of visa applications, and then we have the domestic customers who are also likely to be a large chunk of the entire travel demand rate. Now, in terms of knockout matches, we already know who is playing. So that part is determined, right? There is no uncertainty except for a couple of games where the teams are not yet determined. But if you look at who the participating teams are, except for maybe Italy, they are not the premium teams that people are actually looking out for, right? So we can consider the group stages are kind of done. So the next stage is the knockout stages, and those are the very critical. They're completely unknown at this stage. You can travel to different platforms and you can get a sense of who is going to be there, but it's going to be so important to who is playing. For example, in last year's quarterfinal with Argentina and France, eventually went to the finals. Once France was determined, there was only a 4-day window to the World Cup final, and occupancy just took off. Like, people were emotional. They just want to get the booking done, go to the event, and have a good time. They're not so much concerned about prices at that point. You would have already seen the World Cup ticket prices. They're already super high, right? So if people are buying them, you can imagine people are willing to spend, right? So in terms of when we expect to see this, we probably have like in Qatar, where we saw the booking was almost in line with the booking window for the local period. Here we also expect to see a lot of demand coming in from domestic customers, which means they will probably be following the same kind of booking window that we normally see. So it could be, depending upon your market, if it's 60 days, we probably need from 60 to 90 days, but maybe not a lot early because prices are still stable. In terms of, as we go further and further into the knockout matches, you might see the interval between the matches reducing, right? Which means people have lesser time to make decisions and lesser inventory available. So a lot of it might be motion driven, a lot of it might be the spur of the moment. So those matches will very likely happen eventually once the teams have decided, right, who is going into that. So those will have a very short booking window. And similarly, once we go into something like quarterfinals, finals, the time period between those matches are even shorter, right? So there, the booking will be very last minute. As soon as the teams are decided, people are going to rush to make those bookings. And if you have your pricing set up correctly, there's a very good chance you could end up with a high price booking. So in terms of those knockout matches, what is very critical is to keep an eye out who is qualifying, right? We know that the group stage matches, we know who are playing, but we have no clarity. I mean, we could do some predictions on that, but very critical to keep an eye out who is progressing through each match and try to figure out who's going to end up in your location, because right now the majority of the occupancy is still driven by the group stage matches. If your stadium has a number of quarterfinal, semifinal, your occupancy right now is probably looking low because people have not started booking for this, right? It doesn't make a lot of incentive to book right now, but once we proceed through the matches, we're likely to see much stronger signals on how the pricing is going to play out.
Absolutely. Now, I want us to get to the Q&A, but I love what you're talking about, and there's so much potential with the knockouts and once we get out of the group stages. Again, Kansas City had a presentation a couple of weeks ago. I went through and I did like a quick little breakdown of who it could potentially be. Kansas City and New York have the potential to have Argentina versus Portugal. They're the only two places that have that potential. That potential alone to me says we need to keep our rates high and available because there's so much opportunity there. So being aware of who could potentially play in your market is going to be very, very impactful as well. Now, got a little bit of time left, so I want to throw some questions at you guys. Let me look through these real quick, though. All right, for many cities in North America, June and July already have peak occupancy due to internship seasons, with thousands of people booking for 6 to 10 week stays. Got a twofold question. Do we expect companies to continue to bring interns into these large cities? And do we think a midterm rental operators, I'm sorry, let me see this again. How should a midterm rental operator price this period if they're trying to maximize this entire window? So I think going on that, a good question also to get everybody's opinion on would be, what if you're in a market that's restricted to where they won't let you do anything less than 28? Kansas City has a lot of that. They've opened it up to where you have 90 days to where you can do it as a short-term rental. But if you had a customer, and I'll start with you, Jason, if you had somebody that was in one of these areas where they have to get these midterm bookings, how would you tell them to strategize? And if you want to take it kind of from the listing quality, the marketing side of things, that would be great, because I think you could give some great insights on how to position those types of properties.
So I don't have a customer base on midterms or long term. Just as a marketer, I would put a premium to it because it's just a question of supply and demand at this point, and really focus on that. I'm not the best one to give that type of advice, and I'd rather just be 100% honest.
No, totally love that, Jason. And I'm sure you would probably tell people to really go in and make their Airbnb listing like come in, make this your home base. We're going to take care of you type of a deal.
Correct.
Tim, from your side, how would you approach these more long-term stays?
Yeah, so my Texas property is a midterm strategy. The owner has I don't know if it's exactly month to month, but like there's a multi-month stay in there right now, and she's hoping that they're going to extend through the summer. So she doesn't want a World Cup stay at that at that property right now because she just wants to keep this midterm person. She's not in the market personally, so it needs to like run itself to a certain extent. That's a lot easier with a midterm strategy. So I've got rates up like 10% over that time. And the min length of stay is still 30. So yeah, it's like I've got it bumped up a little bit because like Jason says, there's a little bit of compression in that like there's not quite as many or as much availability. But I think that the price conscious person who is already booking like month long stays is going to remain price conscious, and they're either going to find one of the few places that's inexpensive in the market, or they're going to choose to go somewhere else or postpone their trip. Um, so yeah, I've got rates up a little bit. I still have my length of stay discounts going. And I have a minimum of 30 because we're just hoping to extend the current midterm stay through those nights.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Tim. And I may have I misspoke a little bit on the question, got some clarification from Sebastian on what he was really wanting to know. And it's more so, Adrian, you can hop in and then I'll get back to you, Tim, as well. How would you approach it in a hybrid sense where you can go in and you could get those midterm stays, or you have that option to go in and slice and dice it and get some short terms as well? How would you approach that
So
type of a setup?
I think Sebastian is in the Toronto market, maybe,
Yeah.
might be. But definitely go with the short-term rental a strategy, because at the end, who is coming to watch the World Cup? They won't come for a month for a destination. They will come for the matches, for the games to watch. So if you are maybe somebody from the staff can book a month-long reservation, but that will be really the minority of the percentage of the guests. So if you have the choice and you don't have that regulation that you have to actually rent out just for midterm, go with the short-term rental strategy.
Now, we do have a question that is a little bit more marketing focused. I want to bring it back to you, Jason. And Marianne asks, well, says 45 minutes away from SoFi Stadium, just in or outside of Long Beach. And they've created a new listing, new headline, everything like that. She's asking, what do you mean by including like soccer specific images? And she's asking, like, should I go in and put soccer pennants and things like that up? So for Marianne, since she's
It,
asking
it,
about, she's right there at SoFi. How would you
okay.
help her market that?
So even if she is still at a distance compared to being very close, the demand is still very high. I'm seeing that. I have places around Boston that are in Rhode Island, and the rates are pretty interesting for that being further out. So you can do it on different budgets, and really where it comes down to is that hero image, that first image that someone's going to click because they're scrolling through, whether been a guest or you do your competition and you're going through the different listings that come up on the search engine, like what is attracting you? And because you're in that mode, we're like magnets. We're all programmed that way. If we see something that we like, we want to click on it. How many different listings you do not click on? So if I wanted to do something and I was on a limited budget, I would really focus on my hero image, the first image, to give it that theme. And depending on what you want to offer, you can, reshoot the photography. And one thing I do notice with a lot of guests, there's a lot of like resistance to taking new pictures and doing professional pictures. It's the funniest thing. It's like, I look at that and I'm like, this is your money maker. You spend a couple $100,000 on a property and you have resistance towards photography. So one of my big suggestions is front load one image, get a professional photographer in, and then go from there. And one extra tip from there is the eye looks for symmetry. Look to create well-balanced pictures that are symmetric to whatever you're doing. And there's a straight correlation between symmetry and someone willing to pay higher. Just look at luxury products and how they're framed.
That's a great answer. Tim, Adrian, I'm going to let either one of you hop in here. What kind of advice would you give for Marianne as well? Is there anything that you would change with how you're marketing, how you're positioning their listing. If she's really trying to maximize revenue this time, but it's not right next to the stadium, so to speak.
So, okay, let me go first.
Go for it.
Definitely, I would put something in the description. Also, like how far is it from the stadium? How you can get to the stadium? I think also, especially international travelers, if they know how they can actually get to the stadium, they might actually book something which is a little bit further until you know how you can get to the stadium. I know there also, I think that the rates will depend how close you are to the stadium. Closer you are to the stadium, more premium you will have, and also the accessibility. Are you able to go just by car, or you can get and hop on a public transportation? So definitely update the description how to get to the stadium. That will also have to get also not just domestic but international traveler as well.
Awesome. Tim, anything to add?
SoFi, that's LA, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So I totally second the public transit instructions. International travelers love public transit. They expect it in a city like LA. LA doesn't have great public transit, so you have to like really know where you're going. They would probably have to get there on a bus. The train's a little sketchy out there. And then they should also just be aware of the heat. It's going to be July in Los Angeles, and there's not a ton of shade over there. So they should plan. Absolutely take a bus if you can. Ubers are going to be crazy expensive. Walk if possible, but like the sun is really, really intense at that time. So just I would warn everybody about this whole environment. Also, because it's LA, I would warn people, people expect downtown LA to be like really nice. You know, you think Los Angeles is beautiful, it's going to be nice. But I lived in downtown LA for a number of years and it is not very nice. And people were always surprised. So I'd say just prepare those guests for a little bit. It may be the first and possibly only time they're coming into the United States. They think LA is going to be nice and have great public transit. Just prepare them for what they're going to experience.
I think to kind of put a bow on everything everybody said, from Jason talking about the photos to us talking about, the clear communication. Communication is going to be so important, especially with international travelers. What Jason's talking about, you're communicating with that first photo exactly what you're going to get. Tell these people what they're working with. Just throwing this out there. Maybe you don't go in and necessarily put up, certain teams, logos and things like that, but once somebody books, ask them how you can make it better for them. Go put $150 into Portugal stuff to throw up on the walls if you know some Portuguese fans are coming into your property. Make sure you get that 5-star review. Just full revenue management all across the board. But folks, thank you all so much for joining us. I want to give everybody a quick second to kind of shout out where our audience can get in touch with you. Tim, since you're on the main camera right now, I'll let you start off. Where can people get in touch with you if they want to pick your brain or inquire about your services or just get to know you?
Yeah, RM directory from PriceLabs. That's the best place. I'm also at timspeicher.com, which is just kind of the same thing that's on the PriceLabs website. And consulting at timspeicher.com if you want to get in touch with me. I'll drop the email in here.
Perfect. And then Adrienn, same for you.
Yeah, definitely. Adrienn at myangelhost.com. We have also a website. You can check it out and also ask for our contacts from PriceLabs. We should be there in the PriceLabs expert. So I will shoot also our contacts to the message. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then Jason, I'll go ahead and preface this because we have hit it a few times. All three of our awesome guests today are a part of our revenue management partners program. High quality, high functioning revenue managers. If you ever need some assistance with your revenue management and you want to get somebody that's outsourced, we've got a group of people here for you, a whole bunch of folks for you. But Jason, let's go ahead and talk about it as well. Don't introduce yourself, but kind of sell yourself a little bit. And then let's talk about that World Cup guide that you've got as well.
Okay, perfect. So the easiest way to reach Marketics is at marketics.io. I will put that up in the chat. I do want to make one offer to the person that reached out that we just spoke about. I don't mind reviewing personally her listing and giving her my best professional advice on that. She can do whatever she pleases with it after. That's up to her, but at least she has something for free and getting set up and just You know, I've looked at so many pictures, I've gone through so many events, and I just know what to see. Like at this point, it's not a question of expertise or, you know, tooting my own horn. It's really like you've seen it so often, you see what throws things, you know, what's a deterrent, what's a wow, and what's a whoa. So if I can help out with that, my pleasure. At the same time, if you go to marketics.io, this guide, and the same thing with, you know, my everybody that's watching, go at the bottom, subscribe to the newsletter. I'll ship this off to you. There's 12 pages. It goes through the whole experience, what to do, what not to do. I'll just give you a quick here. The opportunity, the cities, what's involved, the ripple effect at the end, I'm going to tell you, that's really massive. It's you're now on the world scene. People are watching your different cities, and then people get ideas of, wow, that's interesting. And they start talking about whatever city that is, and it creates an extra demand for you as well. So if I can help people out as much as I can, definitely can do so. And I'll include the pictures for inspiration for like how to theme, and if anybody's even more interested in like how to do it on a budget, or how do you create this extra value in between. So my pleasure to share with everybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And again, Marianne, if you didn't hear that, Jason's offering to give you a live listing review essentially. So thank you all so much for joining us. On behalf of Soumyadeep, on behalf of Rafal, I'm Kyle. Really, really enjoyed this one. Looking forward to having our guest on the podcast later down the line as well. But we're going to sign off. Thank you for joining us on RevLabs by PriceLabs. Have a wonderful day. Go make you some money during the World Cup. Bye-bye.